begin with a few fun facts, air quote, fun facts about mothers because some of them are not that fun. The first one, in fact, is actually quite terrifying. The oldest mother on record was 74 years old when she gave birth to twins. That's terrifying. The average mother will change approximately 7,300 diapers by the time her baby reaches the age of 2. A mother spends approximately 1,800 hours a year just feeding her child, and that is equivalent to a year's worth of full-time work. So being a mom is literally a full-time job. A mother's brain can shrink during pregnancy, but it will grow back within 6 months after giving birth. So mommy brain, it's real. According to a study, this one's for you, Case. According to a study, a mother's hug can lower her child's stress. And it has benefits that will last well into adulthood. So see? A mother's voice is the first sound a baby recognizes, and studies have shown that it can have a calming effect on the infant. In the U.S., Mother's Day is the busiest phone day of the year, with around 122 million calls made to moms. And this is the last one, and I actually disagree with it. The average mother spends 18 years of her life taking care of her children. That is not my experience. I am 39 years old, and my mother very much still takes care of me. So I would change this to say the best mothers spend the rest of their life taking care of their children. My thought today is called Tending to the Garden, and it actually came from a devotional that I'm doing. It's just 1 page a day devotional. And this one, I read it, and I just kept going back to it. I'd read the next few days, and I'd go back. I'd highlight some more, I'd read a little bit more, and I'd go back. And so as I was doing that, I really started studying the topic, and I found a lot of what I thought was pretty interesting information, and that's what I'm going to share with you all today. Me and my boys, we have made it our habit since they started school to pray on the way to school. And we have it down pat. They know from the time we back out of our driveway until we get to the end of our little dirt road, they have that time to get buckled, get their stuff situated, because when we hit Dan Newbern, that's our prayer road, and they know this. A few years ago, I upped the challenge a little bit to have them pray out loud. I just found for my children that was an area that they were struggling. I think it was just a confidence thing, so this was just a safe place for them to practice praying out loud. Then, I think maybe a year or so ago, I upped it again, and now they have to lead our prayer. They take turns each week leading the prayer, and I'm not saying that boastfully. I think as moms, we need to share what works, okay? So if you're a mom and you're seeing that maybe that's an area that your kids can work on, this has worked for us. Just throwing that out there. While doing this, though, I recognized that their prayer was pretty much what I was saying, which is fine. That's how we learn. They were just copying what I was saying. And I lent my ear a little. When you hear someone praying your prayer, you're kind of like, oh, well, what does that sound like, actually? And there was a phrase that stuck out to me, and that was actually what this devotion was about, and that's why I kept going back to it. And the phrase was asking God to put a hedge of protection around us. And so I heard my boys saying this, and I just wondered, do they even know what that means? Do I even know what that means? I probably had just said it because that's what I heard my parents say. So I began to really study. And I found that the first time that this hedge or hedge of protection was mentioned in the Bible was in Job 1:10. It says, "Hast not thou made an hedge about him and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. This is Satan basically saying, yeah, Job's been faithful to you, God, because you've protected him, you've blessed him. Of course he's going to serve you. And then he challenged God to remove that hedge, remove those blessings to truly test Job's faith. Well, we know how that story ends. I found it very interesting that the enemy recognized the hedge of protection. I believe the enemy can recognize the hedge of protection around our children. If we're praying that on a daily basis and believing it, the enemy can see that. Well, my mind was wondering, why a hedge? Why some bushes? Why not a stone wall? That seems a little bit more protective in my mind. So I began to read, and in earlier times, in Bible times, hedges were used more often just simply because stones and building materials were not as easy to come by. So farmers would use hedges to keep their cattle in, keep the predators out. So that was, I guess, where the phrase came from. I don't know. By definition, a hedge is a row of closely planted shrubs or trees that form a boundary or barrier between areas. They block out the undesirable. That's what I want for my children. Block out the undesirable. A hedge is a living fence. A hedge is an ever-growing and ever-changing living thing. This means that unlike a wall, a hedge allows for movement and interaction. And this aligns with the idea that God's protection is not meant to isolate us. It's not meant to close us off from the world, but to guide us through it. A hedge allows for the possibility of growth and learning through experiences, where a wall can create a sense of stagnation and fear of change. A hedge of protection is flexible against the ever-changing nature of spiritual warfare. It can adjust to different situations and potential dangers. So to me, as our children grow, that hedge can grow with them. As their challenges, their trials, their temptations grow, that hedge can grow with them. But because a hedge is a living thing, that means it has to be tended to. Enter mothers. Who better to tend to the garden, to take care of that hedge, than the one who was born with that already in us to take care of? I know for myself, I've heard it said before, sometimes you pray for a hole and the Lord gives you a shovel. So I take that to mean if I'm going to pray for something, I better be ready to roll up my sleeves and put in the work required. So today we are going to get out our gardening tools and learn how to tend to the garden. The first step is watering. To grow a healthy hedge, it must be watered thoroughly, especially within the first several years, in order to establish roots. Watering must be done regularly. It is vital for our protection and for our children's protection that we get them to church every time the doors are open. This is where we get fed. This is where we get watered. This is where we get the nutrients we need to survive. Kids kicking and screaming don't want to come? Bring them anyway. Last time I checked, you're the one in charge. Bring them anyway. Babies fuss the whole time? Bring them anyway. Kids fall asleep on the pew? What could they possibly be getting from this? Bring them anyway. They are establishing roots. You are setting them up. You are teaching them the importance of faithfulness. You are teaching them the importance of gathering together. They are establishing roots. The next thing we need are trimmers. Pruning promotes healthy growth. It helps the plant to grow new, stronger shoots. If we want to be made new, if we want to be better, if we want our children to grow and be stronger and better, we must get them into the Word. That is our sword. It is our strength. We must get into it and we have to let it get into us and our kids. And let the word cut off some things. Let that word cut the things off that may be holding us back, holding us down. Let the Bible do that for us. The next thing we need is to protect against weeds and pests, especially here in Florida. Weeds rob the plants of their nutrients, and pests will eventually kill the plant. The best way to fight against spiritual weeds and pests is through fasting. Because in this analogy, our flesh is the weeds and the pests that we fight against. And fasting will get our flesh under control. If we don't fight our flesh daily, if we don't die daily, it will rob us of our spiritual nutrients and eventually kill us. And the last thing, we must protect against storms and extreme weather. The way we can do this for ourselves and for our families is through prayer. There's a reason why we say cover them in prayer. We are in a spiritual battle. Our children are in a spiritual battle. They may not realize it, but it doesn't take long. Just spend a few minutes talking to our young people, and you will see they are up against very spiritual things. Satan is trying to rob them of their hunger for spiritual growth. He is trying to take their desire for kingdom work, and he is trying to plant things in them that should not be there. And the only way to fight for them, the only way to fight in this spiritual battle is going to be on our knees. We must intercede on their behalf. And then we must take it one step further, mothers. It is our job, our responsibility to teach them how to pray too, because it is their greatest weapon. Last spring, I got this wild hair. This happens periodically. I suffer from the gift of thinking I can do whatever I set my mind to, I can do it. I blame my mother because that's what she always told me. So even though I knew nothing about gardening, I knew nothing about what flowers grow best where, I decided I could plant a flower garden. So I did, kind of, for a little while, until it got really, really hot, and then I decided it's not that important anyway. But I learned so much, and there's so much that we can take from the natural world and apply it spiritually. Flowers need water, but not too much water, but enough water, and it's up to us to know where that line is. Flowers need sunlight, but not too much, or they'll burn up. We have to know when to draw the line. Flowers need good, healthy soil, and they have to have the weeds removed from around them. Gardening is very hard work, and it must be done every day, consistently, and that was my downfall, I will admit, because gardening is kind of like laundry. You're never done. You might get caught up on Saturday, the flower beds look great. You wake up Sunday morning, you got to do it again. It's hard work. One of the biggest issues that a gardener faces, I think especially here in Florida, is the soil. And we find that to be true spiritually as well with the parable of the sower in Matthew 13:3. And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places, where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But then others fell into good ground and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. So somewhere along the way, no one was tending to the garden. They had nobody watering, nobody pruning, nobody taking care of the thorns and the weeds, nobody covering. But there is one trick that all gardeners know, and that is that you can amend your soil. If you want to grow beautiful orchids, but you only have hatch bins, dry, sandy soil, it's okay. Just go to the gardening store, find some potting mix that's suited for orchids, and you're fine, you're in business. And we can do the same spiritually. If we find ourselves not growing as much spiritually, it's not because of him. That seed's going forth Sunday after Sunday, Wednesday after Wednesday. But if we find ourselves not growing, not thriving, not being strengthened, whatever it may be, we need to do some soul searching. We need to do some looking within. And we can ask God to help us. And then we have to step back and let him. We can also pray this over our children. Maybe your children have walked away from God. Ask God to change their hearts, soften their spirits, and amend their soil. I learned something else through my gardening experience, and that is that sometimes we may think a plant is too far gone. We think it's dead. It can't possibly come back. It's dried up. It's withered away. I had 2 peace lilies, very special. One was for my Granny Ward's funeral, and one Sister Betty Michael gave to me. I stressed over these things because I did not want to let them die. Everybody kept saying peace lilies won't die. Well, they have never met me, okay? So I was just obsessive over these peace lilies. I kept them inside for a long time, and they were fine, but they weren't like growing. They were stagnant, I guess. So I decided, I finally got brave enough to put them outside, and they just flourished. They were doing so well. And then we had hurricane season, and they did not stand up. They were not hurricane proof. And I thought they were goners. I wouldn't throw them out. I couldn't be defeated, okay? I couldn't let them win. I just kept them, and it was like, I don't know, disciplining myself every time I looked at them. Look what you did, Amy, you let them die. But I noticed something. Just a few weeks ago, we were working out in the yard, and I looked at these plants, and I saw some green shooting back up. You can't kill peace lilies, actually. As a matter of fact, they will come back. Take that spiritually as well. If we just keep pruning them, if we take out all the dead parts, we make sure the pests are gone, we do everything within our power to make sure things are going to go well, trust the seed, and it will come back. I'm coming in for a close if our musicians would like to come out. Several years ago, during service, this doesn't really go along with my message, but it does go along with Mother's Day. And I felt very strongly to share it. I shared it with Brother Boyd as well. Several years ago, I really believe this was back before 2020. During service, it was a very powerful service, and several people were in the front praying. And I was standing in my pew, and I closed my eyes to pray, but I got very distracted by the noise. Does that ever happen to you? Happens to me. I closed my eyes, and all I could hear was the noise. And I just stood there, and it felt like something spoke to me. It sounded like a labor and delivery room. It sounded like a mother giving birth. That's what the wailing, the crying, the prayers, that's what it sounded like. And I felt God speak to me that Hatchman Apostolic was in labor, and we're about to give birth to some new babies. And I've held on to this word all of these years. But when I pray, I often remind God of this, but almost with a spirit of discouragement, because it has been many, many years, and I'm just not seeing the fruit of the labor. Well, at Ladies' Conference, I was praying about this again, and the story of my birthing experience came to my mind. When I was expecting Case, he was our first baby, so we went to all of the classes, did all of the things, and part of that was we had to come up with a birthing plan. However we wanted things to work out, when the time came, we put that down. My plan was very simple. I wanted a natural labor, natural birth, no epidural, only Tylenol if I had to have it. Simple. Well, Case was 11 days late. That was not in my plan. I was finally called to be induced. That was not my plan. I was at the hospital at 6:30 a.m., and come 10:30 p.m., I still did not have a baby. And I don't know if they do this at all hospitals, but at North Florida, every time a baby's born, they play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And that is precious until you're the one laying there with no baby. And you've heard all of these mothers now have had babies. Wonderful. My doctor had mentioned C-section a few times. She kept coming in the room, checking on me. I think you may want to have a cesarean. No, that was not my plan. I did not want to have a C-section. That terrified me. Finally, at 11 p.m., 6:30 a.m., remember? Now it's 11 p.m. I finally said, Dr. Milligan, whatever it takes, whatever it's going to take to give birth, that's what I'll do. Church family, you can all stand. I believe that the waters are troubled. The water has broken. God is trying to bring forth some things. But maybe, I'll speak for myself. I have a picture in my mind of what that's going to look like. I have a plan. I'm a planner. I have it all figured out. Maybe that's not what God's plan is. Maybe God's plan, like my C-section, maybe God's plan is to cut through some things, pull back some flesh, maybe cut through some scars, some things that we've been carrying for a long time. God wants us to get rid of those things. Maybe he is waiting for us to just throw up our hands and say, God, whatever it's going to take to bring my babies home, whatever it's going to take to bring revival to Hatch Bend, Lord, whatever it's going to take to make sure my family is saved, that's what I'll do. Whatever you need me to do, I am here. I will stand here. I will stand on your word. You can trust me, God. You can trust me, God, to do whatever you need me to do.